Yeah, thank you very much for your comments. We did not expect Commissioner Kelley and Mrs. Kelley and Scoppetta this morning. But
I thought it would be easier with all of us here, since one of the keys is to make sure that we have all departments cooperating. So I thought that if we all testified together, it would give you a better opportunity to understand just how well prepared this city was and is.
Yeah, we'd be delighted to hear. I know we have a panel tomorrow at which representatives of your departments are going to take part. We would be delighted at this point to hear Commissioner Kelley or Commissioner Scoppetta. Any comments you would like to add to the mayors?
I think we're just here to answer questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, does this...
Commissioner?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I apologize, Mayor. I was asking the staff if this meant that we would not have their expertise and their insight and their counsel tomorrow.
Well, keep in mind that neither were commissioners when the attacks occurred or in the first 3 months. They're really only able to testify to the city's response after 9/11's aftermath, starting January 1, when they took the lessons that we learned and actually tried to implement them. And for the last 15 months, they've been working very hard to increase the city's preparedness to any future attack, but certainly more than that, to focus on preventing an attack. People talk about first responders. These are our first preventers, and the city is well served by the NYPD and the fire department, not only to prevent possible terrorist attacks, but if you take a look, the murder rate and the deaths from fires continues to decline and has precipitously in the last 15 months. That's their job, and they do it very well.
But, Mayor, my question was, will they still be available to us tomorrow at the 1:30 to 3 o'clock panel?
I thought we would make the head of the Department of Design and Construction, Ken Holden, available. He's the only one in the administration who was running an agency then and was on site, and he can add a lot. I think if there were specific questions, unfortunately, both of these guys have awful lot to do, so I thought if we all came, we could avoid wasting their time.
Commissioner Garlick.
I have a couple questions.
Let me say this. Ray Kelley is probably the best suited person in this country to talk to us about the coordination that is taking place in real time between our localities and the various agencies of the federal government. I had the privilege of working with Ray when he was in the federal government in various capacities, and I know that he is deeply involved with our federal agencies. I would find it enormously helpful if we could have a session with you at some later point to talk in detail about how it is working for you in the city. I would love to hear a general statement now, but to Commissioner Romer's point, I think we could learn a great deal from you if you would make yourself available to us. I know you're incredibly busy, but if you could make yourself available to us to give us a sense of how the various elements of the federal government are relating to each other and to you.
Sure. We can do that in the future.
But if you could characterize it now, I think it would be helpful just to get us started and located, if you would.
I think there's no question that state and local and federal agencies are working more closely now than ever before. We have an excellent working relationship, that is the NYPD does, with both the FBI and the CIA. And the state's Office of Public Security that is involved. We're much closer now than ever before. We have a free flow of information. I don't think there's any question in my mind that we're not getting information, certainly relevant to New York City, on a immediate basis. Internally in the city, I think we're working much closer. Commissioner Scopetta and I and the staffs of the fire and the police department work closely together. We now have executives assigned to each other's headquarters. We make available our helicopter assets to fire chiefs, to survey the scene of major events or major fires. We are now able to communicate on a citywide basis, a interagency communication net that exists. I think it certainly needs further development. Commissioner Scopetta can give you more specific information about their communication system. So just, in a nutshell, there's much more communication, much more coordination than has ever been before. Are there occasional hiccups? Yeah, but nothing really of significance. So I don't know, how I can say it more directly. We're getting the information that we think we need. We, for instance, have increased our Joint Terrorism Task Force component. On September 11, 2001, there were 17 investigators from the NYPD in the Joint Terrorism Task Force. There are now over 100, and they're working with the FBI literally throughout the world. The CIA has been very forthcoming with information as well. We have brought on board General Frank Labuti, retired Marine Corps Lieutenant General, to head our Counterterrorism Bureau. And in that bureau is our Joint Terrorist Task Force component. We have also brought on board David Cohn, a former Deputy Director and Director of Operations for the CIA. Commissioner Cohn is in charge of Intelligence Division. He has really done a remarkable job in pulling that together. We have our own Arabic speakers, Urdu, Pashto, Hindi speakers that we've brought together. Again, in that construct, we worked closely with the federal government as well. So,
Well, as we proceed, I think it would be enormously helpful if we could sit down with you and your team as we have.
I thought tomorrow we'd deliver a statement from both the police commissioner and the fire commissioner, a written statement, so that you can start going in that direction. And as you get more information and formulate specific questions, we'd be happy to answer
Thank you.
questions.
Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Hamilton.
Mayor, I'm very grateful to you and your colleagues for coming this morning. And what especially I appreciated about your statement was the specific recommendations you made. Our task as a commission at the end of the day will be to make recommendations to policymakers to prevent such attacks occurring again. And while you're here, and I hope without taking advantage of you, I would like to get from you what several recommendations you think are most important for this commission to make with regard to the prevention of future attacks.
Well, funding for the people on the ground is perhaps the most important thing that Congress could do. In the end, it is the cop on the beat, it is the firefighter in the truck that does the work. We can talk about policies, we can fund studies, but you need to get those people that do the work to be well-trained, to have the equipment they need, and to be fairly compensated. And you will only do that if you direct the monies to where the need is. It is laughable and tragically laughable to think that a tiny city in another state is under the same kind of threat that New York City is, or that if an attack were, let us pray not, but if an attack were to take place, that it would have the same kind of effect on the entire country.
My point was prevention. Your point is protection. Your point is very, very important and very valuable. And I think your experience in New York City can teach us an awful lot about how we respond to terrorism and how we can protect against terrorism. But is there anything that comes out of the New York City experience that can guide us with regard to the prevention of terrorism?
We spend 1,000 of our police officers on intelligence. New York City Police Department has its own police officers in major cities around the world so that we get intelligence. When you see under Operation Atlas a group of heavily armed men and women in police uniforms all of a sudden show up and then go someplace else, totally unexpected, that is a preventive thing.
Are you comfortable with the amount of intelligence you get from the federal government? Is there good coordination with our intelligence agencies at the federal level, with your intelligence
I think the commissioner
agencies at the
said
cities?
that in terms of information that references New York, Commissioner Kelley is comfortable that we get it virtually instantly. The problem with intelligence is there is so much, and it tends to be so unspecific, that there isn't a direct answer to your question. Only in retrospect can you look back and say whether or not you had too few assets deployed. We will never know whether we had too many. But we have an obligation to prevent, to protect, and if need be, respond to the public. Not just terrorism from terrorists, terrorism from criminals. There's lots of different things that all of our security agencies, law enforcement agencies, fire department, medical people, they have to respond to every day. Not everything is caused by terrorists. I think we are going in the right direction. We have a commitment to provide the level of security that we believe is adequate. It is not as much as we would like. I'd love to have a firehouse on every corner. We can't afford that. I'd love to have a police officer stationed in the lobby of every building. We can't afford that. We have to deal with the economic realities of the world. Having said that, we will provide the level that our senior management in police and fire think is appropriate to make this city safe. And the consequences of doing that are that we will have to, unfortunately, not do many of the other things that the people of this city and this country need due to the limited resources.
Thank you.
Commissioner Benveniste.
Mayor Bloomberg, I thank you for your pledge of full cooperation, and we will certainly take you up on it. I would like to congratulate you on your selection of my old friend and colleague Nick Scoppetta to be a fire commissioner. And I see Ray Kelley, who I have had the privilege of meeting with in the past.
Let me also point out that we have our corporation counsel here, so out of the 4 of us up here, 3 are lawyers.
Oh, dear.
Not a bad thing.
It depends.
Let me ask Nick Scoppetta this question, and one which we will continue to think about, and that is the relationship of the federal and state and local systems working together. Traditionally, there has been the criticism that federal agencies, and particularly our domestic law enforcement agency, the FBI, has treated state and local authorities as in a manner involving a one-way street of information. Many criticisms have been laid to that situation, and let me ask both Commissioner Scopetta and Commissioner Kelley whether in the post-9/11 environment you see any improvement in the flow of information from the federal government to the state and here city authorities.
I think Commissioner Kelley's going to be is in a better position to address that question, and I might start by saying that we rely heavily on the police department, and I in particular rely heavily on my contacts with Commissioner Kelley, which are frequent and continuous, and there have been more than one occasion when he's called me directly to discuss a piece of intelligence that we then jointly acted on. I will say that I think I have never seen better cooperation and coordination between the various city agencies that might be called upon to be first responders, and in particular, fire and police. We have done 4 joint exercises together. We have, as Commissioner Kelley mentioned, executive liaisons at each other's headquarters that report there every day. We have a high-level working committee, our chief of department, our chief of operations, and their counterparts in the police department meet on a regular basis. And so there is a lot of coordination and cooperation and joint planning with police and fire, which is the thing that concerns me primarily. And the relationship with the FBI and the other law enforcement and intelligence communities on the federal level is one that Ray Kelley has, I think, a very good relationship with, and we rely heavily on police intelligence.
I've been in law enforcement a long time, both on the federal and the local level, and clearly there were some issues in the past with the flow of information. I can tell you that that's changed significantly in the aftermath of September 11th. I think the Patriot Act also has changed it. There were some restrictions placed on federal agencies, restricting them from talking to other agencies and indeed talking to local agencies. That has changed. There is a palpable difference in their approach to do it. They want to get that information out. They are getting it out. Again, we're commingled, you might say, on the Joint Terrorist Task Force level as never before with the number of investigators that we have assigned over there. So in terms of the flow of information, it is much, much different, much better than it was prior to September 11th.
Let me also add that it's not just police and fire with the kind of terrorism that you saw on 9/11. Our Office of Emergency Management, our Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, our Medical Examiner's Office, our Department of Environmental Protection, all of those agencies meet virtually every day, have contacts either in person or over the phone. The threat to this country and the threat to this city of an attack on our water supply or a bioterrorism threat or a chemical threat, those are the kinds of agencies that would have to recognize threats when occurrences when they take place, which is not easy to do. You don't just wake up and say, oh, we had a bioterrorism threat or an attack. It is over a period of time that you build information to say, hey, we must have been attacked days ago. That's the way bioterrorism works, and it is having scientists, researchers, personnel on the ground that look and have their eyes and ears open and exercise common sense and have the interdisciplinary as well as interagency coordination. I just cannot tell you the amount of research that is done every day to make sure the city stays safe. And it is not just looking for the kinds of acts that are obvious once they take place.
Let me follow up in one way, and I'm gratified to hear Commissioner Kelley's statement with respect to cooperation from the FBI and other intelligence gathering agencies of the federal government. Are there specific areas where you feel improvement still needs to be made?
I think it's something that has to be worked on every day. You have to be aware of it and conscious of it every day. We don't want agencies to fall back into old habits, and I think it's very important at the top. Certainly here in this city, we have a great working relationship with the Assistant Director of the FBI, Kevin Donovan. It's something that you have to focus on, and you just can't let a slip. So I can't think of a particular area, and we would want to say we need more information in that area. I think as a general approach, people want that information to go forward. Quite frankly, they don't want to be caught holding on to information that should be disseminated. So people now see it in their interest to move that information forward.
Well, I appreciate that, and we look forward to you continuing to think about these issues and to advise us of where we may be helpful in making recommendations for even further cooperation.
We're going to move on because, but I have two more commissioners who have questions. I know we're going to deal with this subject more tomorrow. Commissioner Thompson, Commissioner Roma.
I'd be interested, Mr. Chairman, in hearing from either commissioner about their opportunity if one has presented itself. I know they've been extraordinarily busy with their New York duties in passing on to their peers in law enforcement and firefighting across the United States in other large metropolitan areas the lessons that these departments have learned, or if they've not yet had that opportunity, whether they plan to do that in the future.
A lot of our people have spent a lot of time since 9/11 traveling to other jurisdictions, talking about our experience, talking about the lessons we've learned. And in fact, when we had the McKinsey study done of our response on 9/11, the McKinsey people and our senior chiefs traveled across the country, both talking about our experience and trying to learn something from other jurisdictions. And that was extremely useful. So there's been a lot of that.
We have done some of that, but quite frankly, our focus is right here in New York. There's an opportunity cost when you take your senior leadership and maybe send them to other jurisdictions. I think people are welcome to come here to New York. I think the mayor has proposed that perhaps there even is a possibility for us to maybe have some lessons given, and perhaps some money can come our way as a result of that. But quite frankly, we are focused on New York and protecting this city. So we haven't done as much as that as I guess we could have.
I did volunteer to the President and to Secretary Ridge that we would be happy financing and time being available to share lessons which we learned here with other municipalities. Keep in mind that New York, because of its size and density, is somewhat different than any other city, even the other very large cities. To put it in perspective, our police department is bigger than the police departments of the next 4 largest cities in this country combined. So we have a different problem. 40% of our population was born outside of the United States. There's roughly 140 different languages spoken here in New York City. So when another city might look for somebody that speaks a language, we probably have 100 people in the police department that speak that language. We have a service where you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to interact with municipal government. We have identified 170 different languages that we could take your question in and give you a response. I will say that when we had the terrible tragedy of 9/11, this country responded to help New York in a ways that New Yorkers will forever remember and forever be grateful. And I said to the President and to Secretary Ridge, if we can find the funding and the time, perhaps that is some ways that we can, in a small measure, by helping the rest of this country, say thank you for their outpouring of support back then.
Thank you.
I just want to add one thing. I'm
Congressman
sorry,
Roma. I'm
Governor.
sorry, Kelley.
We do have an excellent working relationship with the senior staff of the Chicago Police Department. They did visit here with us, and we have sent representatives there. So I know you might have a particular interest in Illinois. I wanted to emphasize that.
Thank you. Congressman Roma.
Commissioner Kelley, you not only hit right away on one of the governor's concerns, you hit absolutely on the mark in your 2 minutes what the United States Congress looked at for 12 months on the joint inquiry with regard to what are the 2 key issues to make sure that the federal government is sharing information with local police departments and fire departments and intelligence agencies. The 2 key issues that we found, and I wish you would comment on them, are 1, how do we make sure that people in your department get clearances? The governor of Virginia, Jim Gilmore, eloquently complained to Congress that he wasn't even cleared as a governor to get certain information. And how do you then make sure that you get the information to you and your top people? The second issue is, as you again hit on, and I wish you'd be a little bit more explicit about some ways we can improve this, is actionable intelligence. How do we improve the specifics of that information to you the first time, if not the second time, to give you the right information that can help you prevent some kind of terrorist attack from taking place?
I think the granting of clearances is a real issue. It's still an issue, and it obviously has to be handled on the federal level. There has been some give in the granting of interim clearances, but it just has to be speeded up. And we're on the receiving end of that. I think the mayor and I have had some discussions about that. The background checks are extensive. There's some archaic regulation. I myself, and I've been gone through the nomination process twice, and when I was in the federal government, I moved from one job to the other, requiring another clearance process. That thing had to be done again, even though I was sitting in an office. I was an undersecretary. I was moving to the commissioner position. I had to go through the whole process again. It simply does not make sense. So I think that we just need give in that regard. As far as actionable intelligence, the problem is that it just doesn't come in neat packages. It's not specific. We're not getting it as a nation with great specificity, so therefore it's not coming to us with specificity. You're getting these bits and pieces, and it's difficult for our intelligence agencies, and we work with them. It's difficult to put it together. There's no easy answer. I think we can go back 30 years and all of these discussions that we've had about over-reliance on technology versus human intelligence, but that's what we're faced with now. That's what we get. That's what we get at the national level, and of course that's what comes down to us on the local level.
Let me add to that one of the surest ways to let the terrorists attack us again is for all of us to stay home, seal ourselves in, and let our economy and our lives fall apart because of a perceived threat. America is a country that for 225 years has been willing to stand up, run risks, fight to make sure that we stay a democratic country and to try to help the rest of the world. And we have not gone back and hidden ourselves at home. We have to say, turn it over to the professionals and go about our business. And this constant reaction to ill-defined terrorist threats can only damage our economy and prevent us from responding later on when a real threat does occur. And we have to be very careful that we don't go in the other direction in the interest of being able to show that we had X number of threats and we responded here, here, and here. The fact of the matter is the public has to go on. This is, by and large, let us pray totally, it is a safe country, and we have professionals, certainly in the city, and I think, although I have a little less experience at the state and federal level, to prevent terrorist attacks in the future. Let us all pray. In the meantime, we have to go about our business and our lives.
Last question, Secretary Lehman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your statement. I would really like to request that at a subsequent opportunity that we get the city government's best recommendations with regard to a problem that was highlighted in the Joint Committee investigations and became a major criticism of the FBI in particular, and that is the dominance of the law enforcement and prosecutorial approach to terrorist issues, and the obstacle that becomes in the sharing of intelligence, which may be evidentiary and becomes protected as soon as an investigation gets going, and how how you, at your level, can come up with procedures to ensure that there is full sharing among all the officials in your government, as well as the federal government, even at the expense of perhaps weakening the evidentiary sanctity of a prosecution. That would be very valuable to us in the future.
I agree. I think it's an excellent point, and I think it's an issue of culture. You need that change. Again, the FBI and obviously the Department of Justice, and that's their business, prosecutions. And we are now forced to be in the preventive mode, where we have to focus on stopping another event, preventing another event, rather than doing a retrospective examination of one of these horrific events. And it takes a lot of focus and a real culture change in those agencies. And I think they're doing. I think Director Mueller is doing an excellent job in that regard. But it's a heavy lift, and he understands it. And we've had these conversations.
Do you think you have the right balance in the NYPD?
I think we have it in the department more so than perhaps on the federal level, because I think we're literally at ground zero. So I think there's much more of an awareness of the need for prevention than perhaps on the federal level. But it's something that we have to focus on as well.
And evidentiary considerations are not just for criminal prosecution. We live in a litigious society, and we have to continue day in and day out and pay the bills.